Don't forget, today's broadcast is brought to you by Indian River Walk-In Clinic, Miracle Mile, and mention the Mayor of the Airways if you go there, and you'll get a $10 gift card for your next visit there, Indian River Walk-In Clinic at Miracle Mile Plaza. Matter of fact, James, when you were in town with your son, Luke, he was not feeling too well on the cruise, and so you brought him to Indian River Walk-In Clinic. Do you remember that?
It was Jimmy, and yes, I do. He had strep throat.
Oh, that's right. It wasn't Luke. It was Jimmy. That's right, yeah.
Yes.
But you got good service there, and they took good care of you, didn't they?
We were very pleased, absolutely.
Well, thank you for that endorsement from my friends who have sponsored my show for 10 or 12 years now. I'm not sure. But Indian River Walk-In Clinic, folks, get your free $10 gift card when you stop in there. You're feeling ill, flu, you break something, whatever might be going on, stop in there and see the folks at Indian River Walk-In Clinic, Miracle Mile Plaza, right near the Hallmark store there. Now, today, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking to my nephew. He's on the line from Connecticut. And my nephew, James. We also have his new friend, Joe Soll, who is a LCSW psychotherapist and author. His website, I was just there, is adoptionhealing.com, adoptionhealing.com. And, of course, I was reading that Adoption Healing, in conjunction with Adoption Crossroads, is the largest network in the world for helping those separated by adoption, with over 400 adoption search and support groups worldwide. It's a not-for-profit. Now, is this how you two met, James?
We met on Facebook online. Joe's group was one of the first that I found, his support group.
Mm-hmm.
And he runs a nightly chat for adoptees and natural mothers to connect. And it's been great to be able to connect to other people in living with the same kind of similar experiences.
In case you've just tuned in, folks, I did not know that James existed until a year ago. He was my brother's son, who I never knew that our mutual friend Linda Leo had back when we were kids. And he now 47 years of age, connected with us. And that's how we've been discussing this. It's been great because now I have a family I never knew I had. And Joe Soll is on the line. He is also adopted and became a psychotherapist and helps people with the trauma of being adopted. What sort of fruition comes from this whole trauma of being adopted, Joe?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Like what the fruition is? In other words, what is the outcome of people that are haunted by the fact that they're adopted? Maybe they don't feel they were really loved, or they were rejected, or their abandonment that subconsciously affects their life. In what ways?
Well,
lovability.
Let's take it away from adoption for a moment.
Okay.
I'm going to assume that there is a 7-year-old girl. She comes home from school, and her father has to tell her that mommy was hit and killed by a school bus. That child is almost certainly going to believe that she's unlovable, because if mommy loved me, mommy wouldn't have died.
Uh-huh.
If Daddy loved me, Daddy wouldn't have let Mommy die.
Yeah.
And if God loved me, God wouldn't let Mommy die, so I'm unlovable.
Yep.
Okay. So for an adoptee, let's take age 7, which is when we start roughly to become logical. Mm-hmm. And I start to think about what happened to me, and the only conclusion I believe that we can come to is I'm unlovable, or my mother would have kept me. So there's something wrong with me. What's wrong with me? I'm unlovable, and that gets put into a place in our brain that is just untouchable from then on, because it's too horrible to think about. There's no blaming here. It's the way kids think.
Yeah.
I said earlier, everything revolves around children. We're egocentric. So once I believe I'm unlovable, and I can't touch that because nobody can truly tolerate that belief. I have to pretend that everything is okay, because I have to stay away from that.
So when I lost my dad when I was 5 years of age in a car accident, subconsciously I blamed myself my whole life?
It's very, very likely that way down deep there's a belief that Daddy didn't love me or he wouldn't have died.
Huh.
Now, this can be something we're aware of, or we can be in total denial of it. And the reason is it's so painful. When somebody is in a motor scooter accident, for example, and they get really banged up and they break some bones, they go into shock.
Yes.
Physical shock. Their body protects them. They have no idea they've been hurt. Well, when people have emotional pain, they can go into emotional shock and have no idea that they have emotional pain.
Right.
So this is something that is not talked about, but I think is a huge issue for us adopted people, and it's very common for the adoptees I work with to way down deep say, I'm unlovable. There's something wrong with me. I am unlovable, and then not be able to even talk about it.
Sure. Now, I want to ask you, I've been traveling around on your website here, Joe. It's funny because normally people would put, the books would be read on the front page. I'm having a hard time finding where I can find your books. So, I mean, I know it of course, it smacks of your legitimacy that you're here to really help people, but I'm going down the red section here. Oh, there it is. Finally, I found it. Books. Okay.
Also across the top, there's 6 buttons, and one of them says books.
Oh, good. Okay, so anyway.
It says books, and then it says healing weekends, and then it says video links.
I just pressed books, and it said this page may have been removed, so you might want to check that out, because I think after this broadcast, we're going to get a lot of people going to adoptionhealing.com, and I applaud you for being here. I mean, first of all, you are a child who was adopted or snatched away, or however you want to put it, the trauma, but at least you're a champion for going in there and trying to help others to get healing. Are you having success? I mean, I know you two found each other. My nephew found you online. So are you having some success? Do you have any stories where somebody has had healing because of what you do?
Well, if you by success you mean healing,
yes,
yes, and I really believe that anybody who spends the time in therapy to work on their pain will heal, but it's a long mountain of recovery to heal from any trauma, and one just has to be willing to make the commitment to do that. Where I really find great success, if you want to, I don't use that word, but when adoptive parents see the light and bring a 6 or 7 or 8-year-old into therapy to work on their pain, their whole world changes. And they don't grow up the way James and I did, with all this horrible pain inside of us, because we can help a child at that young age get away from the belief that they're unlovable. We can go from there and change everything in their outcome.
That's wonderful. And I just want to interject another thing. When you're defining the success that Joe has, excuse me, there are many ways that he can be successful without even realizing it. For example, early on in my reunion, having to deal conceptually with loving 2 mothers, he has got an article up there addressing this issue, and it was very helpful to be able to read that, because that is just unnatural to have, but something you need to accept.
It's the ramifications of all this are really astounding, in the fact that James and I, and Cece and I mean, I'm so thankful that Cece, who connected with us 10 years ago, has, first of all, that her family is as lovely as it is, and they accepted Uncle Rhett and my mom. And, I mean, she could have been married to a jerk, and Joel and I just laugh together and have a great time. The boys love me. Now I've got James, and Luke has certainly embraced me. Jimmy's a little distant, and Liz is a wonderful human being. And but it's kind of weird, because James and I will talk at night, and he'll say, "Okay, Uncle Rhett, love you," and I'll go, "Love you," and then I hang up the phone and I go, "It's kind of bizarre telling somebody you've only known for a year you love them." And yet the absolute, you know what I mean? But the absolute, this is my brother's son. This is my blood runs in his veins, and the boys, Jimmy, his son, is a little distant. And it's like, in time, I got to look him in the eye and say, you may not like Uncle Rhett. Maybe you do like Uncle Rhett, or maybe this whole thing is like you think it's weird. Well, so do I. But guess what? My blood is in your body, and we are connected. And all the years that have been stolen from James and I, and Jimmy and I, and Luke and I, and Elijah and Jonah and Cece, I want it too. I mean, you look at, I could have had a niece and a nephew growing up. And you know as well as I, the children around you give so much to you. I mean, just like in the internet. You hang around with old folks, you don't learn anything. You get around with a young person, and all of a sudden, you can go here, go do this. And it's like, I don't go to Disneyland, but if I had like the kids here, it's an excuse to go again. And by introducing them to Disneyland, I mean, the ramifications are explosive. I've been robbed, they've been robbed, and we're trying to make up for lost time.
Let me interject one quick thought. I recently was able to call for the first time ever my great aunt Alice, a sister of my great grandmother.
Yes.
And I spoke to her once on the phone, and at the end of that conversation, we probably talked for 40 minutes. And at the end of that conversation, she told me she loved me, or just like that.
Yeah.
And, I think the more you accept that we're all mortal, and you don't know how many days you have left on this earth, it allows you to be a little more open. And my experiences have allowed me to say I love you to a lot of people in my life that I do love, and not be afraid to say that.
And Aunt Alice was my grandma Delancey's sister. She's now, how old is she now? Is she 97, 98? And
she's going to be 99.
99. Now listen to her. I call her on the phone recently. James sends me a text or an email and says, what is this about? The fact that your grandmother and my grandmother and grandfather had a daughter named Betty, or Elizabeth, my mother, who's deceased now. And we were very close. And it says that she married a man when she was 18, and they quickly got an annulment. My grandparents made them get an annulment, and that was the end of that. My mother, all the years that I knew her, 80 years she was alive. I, of course, in my early 60s. She never told me. At first, I was shocked. I was hurt that she had kept this from me. I can't believe there's something about my mother, Elizabeth, as close as we were. And so this traumatized me for a day. I was very upset. And then until Barbara said, hey, that's really, if she wanted to keep that her business, it was a little mistake. She married her cousin, I guess it was. Craziness or something like this, right? Is that what happened, James?
I didn't know that part about it.
I think he was her cousin. Yeah.
All right. Let's not dive too deep into the personal story, because there's a couple of issues I want to make sure we talk about with Joe before we're out of time here.
Okay, please.
Please. No offense. But
no.
So, Joe, one of the points to be made here is that many of the therapists that are trying to help people with these issues aren't really trained in adoption and how to deal with adoptees. Is that correct?
Yes, and I'll give you an example, a story. When I graduated with my master's, I went to the dean of my school and suggested that it's important that somebody teach adoption and foster care issues. And she said, no, we can't do that. And I browbeat her for weeks. And she finally said, okay, let's talk. And I said, why can't we teach adoption issues? And she said, because there are too many trustees who are adoptive parents. And if we teach adoption issues, it means there's something wrong with adoption, and they'll stop helping us raise money.
Wow.
And I don't know of any school in the country for psychiatrists or psychologists or social workers that teach a core course on adoption. There are some schools that teach adoption issues from time to time. It's not done. And there's a huge portion of the population who are adopted and need help, and so the therapists don't recognize it. And it's not the therapist's fault. Nobody's training them. So if we listen to the media says that all of us adoptees are happy, so why would a therapist even think that there's a problem?
Why? Okay, you're on my show, and I'm glad you are, but why is this? Seems like, you would have thought that Oprah was broaching the subject. You would have thought that it would have been on the Today Show. How come? Why is this? This is all new territory. It seems to me. I mean, have I had my head in the ground by myself, or is this true for the majority of us?
I have an explanation.
Yeah, go ahead.
Real quick. I think more and more grown adoptees are starting to come to the realization of trauma and come out of their fog. And one of the reasons is I know there's a lot of stories online. The DNA testing is allowing the reunions. The reunions are opening up the pathway to these hidden feelings for many, many, many people from the baby scoop era. So this is becoming more and more prevalent, the talk and the discussion. And Joe, what were you going to say? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, you didn't interrupt me. It's
Okay.
a huge problem, and I honestly don't know the answer. But we have a media frenzy for adoption. Almost every night on television, somewhere on a network program, they'll be talking about adoption and how wonderful it is. Somebody's adopting a baby and how lucky they are that they're getting to adopt a baby. Nobody ever talks about what goes on for the baby.
Right, and what is this month? NAAM, National Adoption Awareness Month, and we're all in the reform movement trying to flip the script and tell the different perspective of this.
Okay, so yes, it's National Adoption Month, and we're supposed to celebrate adoption. So I am supposed to celebrate the fact that I lost my mother when I was born. How am I supposed to do that? Unless I stay in denial.
Maybe they should change the title of this event, like something like Contemplation of Adoption Month, or
how about Family Preservation?
Family Preservation Month would be nicer. Look, there is a $3 billion annual expenditure of money on babies in this country. $3 billion every year is spent on adopting babies. That's huge.
Now, these adoptees have an overrepresentation with addiction. Is that correct?
There is a huge connection between adoption and addiction, both for adoptees and for natural mothers, because it's one way to hide from the pain.
And the pain is you feel you're not lovable, you haven't been loved?
You're not. Well, the pain starts with I lost my mother. It's a death. Mm-hmm. If I don't grow up with my mother, then I experience the psychological death of her, and mothers experience the psychological death of their child. And people need to be able to grieve their losses instead of being told to get over them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What happens when someone dies? You're all consoling each other and crying openly and accepting this and mourning.
That's true.
It doesn't happen in our case.
People come to you and say, I'm so sorry that your mother died when you were born, for example, and what can I do to help you? You must be so sad. We get, it's so lucky that you're adopted, instead of it's so sad that you lost your mother when you were born.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not about blaming. It's about trying to understand why it is the way it is and trying to do something about it.
You're showing the other side that we didn't know about.
And you couldn't know about it.
No. Mm-hmm.
Right. You know, out of my adopted family, my Aunt Pat is one of the ones that I've talked to about. Well, I've talked to everyone about it, but I mean, Aunt Pat and I have talked a little bit more detail. And she was like the first one to hold me. And when she held me in her arms, she did think of my mother out there in the world, that there was, some young woman who gave up their child, and now I'm holding this child. And what is that doing to that person?
Yeah.
So,
well, that's because Aunt Pat's a mom. That's because Aunt Pat is a mom, and she's a very good human being.
Yeah, but not all mothers, see that. And, and I'm not going to fault the adoptive parents. The adoptive parents want their family, and their intentions are good for the most part, I think. But, there's a loss, and it's something that I'm glad people are starting to talk about and to treat.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad. I hope that these series of shows that we're doing for adoptees and adoptors and on all the families that experience the ramifications of the trauma, think how it affected me a year ago. I'm getting a massage and the phone rings, and it's my brother's daughter, who I never knew existed, who's now part of the family, and her family, calling me, say, Uncle Rhett, I've got some news for you. I have a half-brother, and your brother also had a son who lives in Connecticut, and has 2 boys the exact same age as Elijah and Jonah, and warm tears are going down my cheeks, and I could cry right now just thinking about it. It's been wonderful, exhilarating. It's been traumatic. It's been it's just an amazing experience, and I really want to thank psychotherapist Joe Soll for taking an hour and a half to be with us today, and your website, adoptionhealing.com, and for writing the books. And I'm here to be of service to you, and hence in service of everybody that has need of your calling. Okay, Joe?
Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, thanks for taking time to be here. Nephew
Yes, sir.
James, thank you for putting this all together again. And
Absolutely.
I hope that you'll continue to set these up on YouTube and wherever else, so people can heal together. Adoptionhealing.com. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, James. This is the mayor of the airwaves.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank
Have
you,
a great
sir.
day, people.
Someone somewhere needs your random act of kindness, as it is written, "Give unto others, and your light will rise out of the darkness like the noonday sun." Yeah, who loves you, baby?